Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. Um, when we label ourselves, we can limit ourselves, keep ourselves from doing things that are in our best interest or from reaching our highest potential. And when we label others, we can create assumptions and um, have a barrier in between us that impedes communication and deep relationship. And so today we're going to talk about what is the danger in assuming your introvert extrovert tendencies and how does that impact how we behave. And so Tara and I are going to dig into this because the labeling piece, when we label ourselves, we tend to do the same thing over and over again, right? That is how the brain works. And similarly, when we do that, we take that experience and we layer it on to what we're seeing out there. If this is our experience, we assume that that must be someone else's experience, unless we're careful and come onto the Daily Huddle on Wednesdays and talk to Tara and I about how not to do that, how to be creative, how to create anew in each and every moment. So that's what we're going to talk about today through the lens of introvert and extrovert and the dangers of making those assumptions and placing labels on ourselves. So Tara, what are you? If you had to say.
So I used to think I was an extrovert. And
Mhm.
then if I fall into the myths of today, I would say big time introvert. But today, what I'm going to say that I am is an ambivert.
Mhm.
And so I think I fall on the bell curve pretty solid. And so I thought it would be fun to dig into some of the myths of what we believe to be true about extroversion versus introversion. So what about you, Kathryn?
I've always said I'm an ambivert.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never heard anybody else say it. We've never talked about it, but that's what I've always said because I'm not really truly an introvert.
Mhm.
And I'm definitely not all the way to the edge of the spectrum, an extrovert. But one of the ways that I can tend towards the introvert side is in the wintertime. And this is exactly when we were talking about this, what I was thinking about is that I'm a homebody. I like to be at home. And when given the opportunity to go out or go meet friends for dinner, my first tendency is to be like, no, I'm just going to stay at home. I'm an introvert. And those are the places that can keep us stuck, can keep me stuck for sure. So I'm excited to hear about the myths and how we can step out of them because really that's not true. I can step out. We have to push ourselves to go to not the extremes, but to go to the outer levels of our comfort zone, I think, to keep ourselves growing. I think that's what we always talk about is how do we keep growing ourselves, regardless of what someone else might say, what a label might say about us, et cetera.
I love that. And, thinking about our topic, which is, what is the danger of labeling ourselves? I think the answer to that is a little bit obvious, but what I don't want folks to take away is, okay, I know that I'm an introvert or I know that I'm an extrovert, therefore I am not able to, and then fill in the
Right.
blank. So I
Right.
need to work toward that. What I hope people will take from this conversation is I need to work with my strengths and my natural gifts.
Right.
Um, that I've read a lot of research about whether or not extroversion and introversion is genetic versus environmental, and it's all over the place, really. I don't think there's a clear answer, but there is a little bit of science, which I find fascinating, which leads us into the first myth. And it is this, that introverts are already kind of overstimulated. Like they too much stimulation is difficult on them, whereas extroverts crave stimulation, and
Okay.
that all falls into the world of dopamine and our levels of dopamine. Like extroverts, like true genetic extroverts, they like more risk-taking activities. They like more like cold caffeine or hot caffeine drinks, things like that. But the first myth, I think, to me, it was the most enlightening because I've heard people say this over and over again. I'm an extrovert, I get my energy from people, or I'm an introvert, I get my energy from being alone. And that is a myth.
Really?
Yes.
I did
So
not know that.
let's break it apart a little bit. There's some truth, but it's very nuanced. So here's what I love to remind myself of especially when I believe I definitely lean more toward introversion. We all get energy from social interaction,
Mhm.
all of us. That's how we are absolutely biologically wired. Especially when we create safe, intimate connection, which is more natural for introverts, interestingly, that is a form of energy in the form of oxytocin. So if we all get our energy from social interaction, because that's how we're biologically wired, then where does that separate us? And the way it separates us is our tolerance for that stimulation and what we need as a result of a cocktail party. So you and I think both would say, if we go to a cocktail party, a bunch of people, a lot of conversation, we can decide to enjoy it. But when we get home, we're done. We need to decompress. Whereas someone who's naturally extroverted, both folks could feel very confident, very social, but the extrovert, the genetic part of extroversion, can leave that cocktail party and continue to be up and social and in connection more easily and more natural. So that's the first myth that I've uncovered.
Okay,
That's enlightening to you at all?
well, it is, because I have always heard that we get energy from ourselves or get energy from others. And you're right. I can tell the way I feel when I'm around people, even if I'm in an introverted state, meaning I just kind of want to sit on my couch by myself. And it is different. So I think it is interesting to pull it apart and speak more directly about what does that mean and what's your tolerance for that?
Right.
You
Absolutely.
know, I think introverts, to your point, tap out earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I also, and I think this also might go without saying, but sometimes I think we confuse introversion with shyness or lack of confidence, and
Yeah.
they really do not equate.
Yeah.
I have a friend who has very low self-esteem, but she's very social. And so the anxiety comes from her low self-esteem, not from her wanting to be connected. And that's empowering because that gives us something to work on. So what would you think about extroversion versus introversion as it relates to public speaking?
Well, I would think extroverts are better at it than introverts, but I have a feeling you're going to bust that myth too.
Mythbuster. So really what the myth, I actually probably should give a little bit of resource. I apologize for the disorganization. Some of my favorite thought leaders are Susan Cain, Adam Grant, Malcolm Gladwell, and Dan Pink. And that's where this information is coming from. So just FYI, and yeah. Susan Cain actually wrote a book called Quiet, and then I forgot the tagline, but The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking.
Okay.
But what I'm sharing with you all, these myths are from Adam Grant with some weighing in from Dan Pink, Malcolm Gladwell, and Susan Cain. And the second one is that public speaking is for extroverts. That is a myth, absolutely a myth. Anyone can feel anxiety around public speaking. It has nothing to do with your introversion versus extroversion. I love public speaking, but I'll tell you when I don't love it is when I'm not prepared. And that leads to my introversion tendencies. Whereas extroverts can grab the microphone and just wing it. And if I really know my topic, I'm comfortable doing that in conversation. But just to say, hey, here's a microphone, start talking about whatever you want to, that would be anxiety inducing for me personally, but has nothing to do with the introversion versus extroversion. And something else I think is interesting is Susan Cain is one of the top paid speakers in the country. Same for Malcolm Gladwell. They're both introverts. Susan Cain talks about being prepared. Malcolm Gladwell says that for him, speaking, and I think this is like light bulb moment, speaking is a performance. And so it's just like, they say that a lot of actors, that's their art. They're really quite shy or quite introverted, and that's their acting. That is their performance. So I don't love to look at it like that because it feels inauthentic. And what I love about public speaking is to keep my mindset in gifting in an act of service. So what about you in public speaking?
Oh, nervous, anxious. It is interesting to hear. And one thing that came to mind, I don't know if this fits or not, but, extroversion is about connecting with other people, talking to other people, and when you're on stage delivering, it's different. You're not. So it makes me wonder if an introvert is up there alone, if there's anything to that. I don't know if there is or not, but I think it's just like you pulled apart shyness. I think it's important to pull apart anxiety, like for public speaking. Like I'm anxious public speaking in front of a group of people, but that may or may not have anything to do with introvert or extrovert.
I tell you what, this is making me think about, and Andrea can probably attest to this, is if I'm prepared, like I am today with my 5 myths, I'm in my comfort zone. I'm
Yep.
excited to share what I've uncovered, and I've organized it in such a way that I hope it will be valuable and memorable. You are perfectly in your comfort zone when you're asking people these deep, thought-provoking questions, and you just follow with your curiosity and your wisdom and love to where that conversation takes you.
Mhm.
I can do that in a one-on-one setting for a little while, as you know, and then I'm like, okay, I got enough of this. So to me, that is way more anxiety inducing than taking that microphone. Why do you think it is?
Interesting. Did you say, why do I think that is?
Yeah, I mean, you can stand at our whole FemFort gathering and ask one person these deep questions, not knowing where it's going to go, and hoping that everybody will learn something from your ability to connect like that.
Yeah. And I can't, what you do, I cannot, I mean, standing up there and delivering and watching you do, I'm like, oh my Lord. Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it is what you said is lean into our strengths. And that's clearly a strength of yours. You are a storyteller. You know how to perform, I mean, authentically, but still it is, like you said, a performance. I think it's what are our strengths and how do we connect with people? And I am curious what Andrea has to say about it.
Actually, what I was thinking, ladies, and you both will know this, and you're experts in brain, it probably is connected to our thinking about surviving. So if you're surviving, your brain is trying to find what is comfortable for it, so it doesn't deviate from other things. And if you are in that anxiety, you are like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. Like I need to survive right now. So probably is connected with that surviving mechanism your brain has. And it goes into like, okay, what is comfortable for me so I don't die? And it is whatever you are comfortable, either prepare or being in front of. But I don't know, I think it's related somehow with our brain thinking we're going to die.
I do think I'm gonna
Because
die when
I've
I get
seen,
on that stage.
yeah, I think I've seen that because it's that feeling like truly I'm going to have a heart attack right now.
Yeah.
I need to stop. And I've seen that in the people that I've coached and the business owners that I've coached is I cannot do this. It's truly fear. I cannot make this step. And I'm comfortable here because your brain is like, yeah, you're gonna die. So I'm gonna stay here, preserving my calories and providing a way of being and surviving. That's what it triggered me. Triggered to me.
I love that you have brought that up because it really, really coincides with our topic of the danger of telling ourselves we can't or we are not.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's not just for introverts. Like if we tell, I have a friend who is a classic extrovert, but to get vulnerable is very, very uncomfortable for her. She just avoids it at all costs. And I think you're onto something. It's that fight or flight. Like, this is not my comfort zone. I want to flee.
I'm gonna die. I feel like I'm dying. Look at my hands. I'm sweating. My heart's palpitating. I need to stop because I don't want to die right now.
Yeah, and I also want to say something about the sort of dying, and I know you're saying it metaphorically, but for me, it's also, it's being excommunicated. Because often it's not actually I'm physically going to die. I'm not going to die if I stand on the stage. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. I'm fine. But they're going to think badly of me. They're going to kick me.
The community aspect of it.
Exactly. And I think that cannot be minimized at all. It can't be made, it's the biggest thing that we have. I mean, that's when we do die, is when we're kicked out of the community.
Yep.
Wow.
Thank you, ladies.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Always love having you here. Okay, number 3, on to our third myth. Extroverts are better leaders.
No, I didn't know that was a myth. I wouldn't say so. And I know you're going to bust it because I think people would probably tend to say, because they're out there and but if introverts connect more intimately, there may be something to that. I don't know. Why are they? Does it say why they are better leaders?
So what the research shows is that more leaders happen to be extroverts, but that doesn't necessarily, what the study showed is they've related it to profit margins. And where the sweet spot for profit margin, interestingly, is this. If the leader is an introvert, he needs more of an extroverted team, and vice versa. He or she, I hate that I said he, but that was in the study. A gentleman from Campbell Soup, some massive, successful CEO from Campbell Soup, was a definite introvert. And when he left, he had over 30,000 personal notes written to him about what he had meant to them in their career.
Wow.
Yeah, because he had that ability to really connect with people on a deep level.
Wow.
So again, just let's remember that introversion does not mean shyness.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other thing you're pointing to are what are the qualities, for instance, of a good leader, a good public speaker, any of those things. Those are different from the qualities of an introvert or extrovert, because what you just said, the difference is that their tolerance for being around people and getting that energy from people. That's very different. That may or may not be a quality of a good leader. Do you know what I mean? So they really are. I think what you're ultimately saying, and I am interested in the last two to see if my theory is correct. They're two different things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And I think what we're also hearing here is we need both. We need the ambiverts. We need that wide bell curve.
Well, and I think I want to also keep bringing it back to this is a conversation about how do we grow ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to sit on the couch and be lazy all winter and say I'm an introvert, I don't really want to go to dinner with my friends, when I know probably I do need to get out and be social, you know, it's pulling ourselves to the edge of our comfort zone, and the awareness and the knowledge about ourselves and then therefore about others is what's so empowering.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I too have that tendency. And as you know, I'm working really hard to build a network where I live in Augusta, because Caroline is here and traveling has been minimized. And the days that I'm in front of this computer in my sweatpants and earrings all day is kind of my comfort zone. But here's what I've learned is now that I'm getting out there and networking, I don't go to those giant networking events. I go to smaller ones,
Right.
like Rotary and committee meetings. And I come alive. I'm always glad that I put on shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
again, that's the danger of labeling ourselves one or the other and then living in that instead of challenging ourselves to say, how can I step out? What do I really need? What do I truly need?
Absolutely. I just love that we're really shining a light on the fact that we all need social connection, maybe in different forms and in different quantities. But the quality really leads into our fourth myth. And it's what I've already really touched on is that extroverts are better networkers, which is a myth.
I would have said that if you had that before this conversation. Certainly, I would have said, sure, extroverts are better. Yeah. But through the conversation, you know, you think about introverts and they're better at intimacy, which creates connection, which creates, yeah, interesting.
Totally. So the research tells us that extroverts have typically bigger networks. And they're connectors, and they take pride in all the people that they know and all the people that they can manage. Again, my classic extrovert friend, I so see this in her. But my introvert tendencies, and this is something else I think is fascinating, and I bet this would be the same for you. You tell me if I'm wrong. As I've leaned into my introvert tendencies, it's caused me to be so much more transparent and open. Not that I was ever dishonest, but I think I used to be more guarded.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as I'm more open about my journey of life, here's what's happened, Kathryn. Some people can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have kind of stepped, I think, a few layers farther from my circle. But you know what's happened in return? As it has invited some of the most genuine, energizing, beautiful friendships at this stage in my life more than ever before. And that's all from knowing myself and being open about my path.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. I love that.
Certainly invites the same. Okay, here's the last one, which I think is fun. And then I want to have some conversation around this. And if we have time, I'll give the 9 ambivert examples, which are super quick. But the last one, and this is my history, and this makes me stand tall. And it is that extroverts are the best salespeople. And that is definitely false.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it for the same reason, or is it just that there is no correlation because they really do have very different qualities? You know, what it makes a good salesperson, and you may or may not have that as an introvert or extrovert.
The second one, absolutely. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean the introverts are necessarily better salespeople. They're different in how they go about closing sales and can be wildly successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It makes me think about, you know, some extroverts I know who aren't very good at intimacy. and how it feels to be in their presence, where it's big and boastful, but you don't feel connected. So you walk away from that and it's like, nothing really landed with me, you know? So I do think it's a point to pay attention to when wanting to have an impact in any of these ways, salesperson, leader, speaker. It's how do you connect with people?
Yeah.
It's all a people business still.
Absolutely. You know what? I would love to hear from folks that are here with us today, how you see yourself and if this has informed you in any way. I'll give people a minute to think that question over.
Sorrel.
So you've been accusing me as you were speaking. It's like, oh my God, yeah, that's me. That's me. That's me. And what I'm taking away is that as we were creating the question for the context question for this conversation yesterday, Kathryn and I had a little back and forth over text messages, and I'm connecting to the other form of the question. Are we condemning ourselves to failing by labeling ourselves as either introvert or extrovert? And I can see where I've cornered myself in some places, thinking that I have to be an extrovert to be good at X, and then concluding that given that I am an extrovert, because you were accusing me, Tara, it's like, oh my God, that's me, that's me, that's me. You know, concluding that given that I am an extrovert, that there are certain things that introverts do that are just simply out for me, you know, those are just not for me, right?
Right.
So I can see how I have cornered myself as an extrovert. So that's what I'm taking away from this, that there is real danger in actually believing that I am a certain way.
And have you thought that you're a natural extrovert, or you think that you need to be?
No, I'm naturally an extrovert. Based on what you were saying, it's like, oh yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me.
Yeah, I can see that.
And for a long time, Tara, I thought that was cool. You know, and in some way, shape, or form, I wanted to convert a number of introverts, right? And in this conversation, I'm discovering that maybe it's just a label.
It is.
Yeah,
At the
and
end of the
now I
day,
can give myself the permission to lean into some of the characteristics and behaviors that come easily to people who say they're introverts, and practice that too. Yeah.
I love that.
I can practice not going to the next party after the big party. Because that's me. It's like, oh yeah, let's get some more.
Yeah. And see, I don't need any practice with that. I need to go to the next party. That would be my stretch.
Sorrel, I'm kind of curious though, because I suspect that you are comfortable with vulnerable conversations, but I wonder, number one, if I'm right about that, and number two, if you have worked to become that, or it's natural to you.
It's not natural, but something about it became, for me, I'll call it like addictive. Because the minute I say something like I've just said, gosh, you know, I see how I'm cornering myself, right? And it leaves me connected to me in a way that I couldn't have been if I wasn't trying at least to be vulnerable.
It's so inspiring to be that self-aware and to have put that much work into yourself, really for the good of others. That is really inspiring.
So, yeah, I've grown to love being connected in the way that being vulnerable and creating the space for others to have the permission to be, that gives me a lot of life.
I love the way you said that. Thank you. Thank you. Shiva has something to share. I'm so happy to see you and your ray of light.
Hi, thank you so much. It feels great to be here. Um, so I love this conversation. You know, it makes me think about a few things just that I've heard about introvert, extrovert, especially as it pertains to cells. And I wish I remember the name of the book. And it tells the story of this extroverted salesperson calling this like really introverted, quiet, like meet potential customer. He'd get on, he's like, hey, what's up? No, 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 you know, and then the woman would always, no, 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 I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. And so because he identified himself as like extrovert, this is how I got to get done, he was constantly pushing in more like introverted people away. And he ended up getting some coaching and support around it. Went back in, started to connect, like one, lower his voice, really like match her energy. And he got the cell. And by implementing both extrovert, introversion, like whenever it was called for, his cells radically increased. So I'm really loving being a part of the conversation because it just so affirms, it just affirms the truth. And even for my personal self, I kind of have myself as like in the middle. And there are times when I am so identified with my introversion sometimes, and I'm out in a place and requires more extroversion. I feel myself like kind of having a little bit of a struggle there, but I like this idea about not being so attached to one because it makes me feel like, okay, I could choose. Like in this moment, let me choose extroversion because that's what's required, and so on, so on, so on. So this is just such a wonderful conversation.
That's really, thank you for sharing that because it does remind us to kind of, you know, the saying, meet people where they are.
Yes.
If you come in hot and spicy to someone who's kind of more laid back, it's like, whoa, it's very overwhelming. And quite the opposite. If someone's high energy and you can't meet that energy. So it is empowering to free us from those labels and realize that every moment, every interaction, every relationship might call for something a little bit nuanced that we can work toward.
Yes, 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 yes.
Awesome.
Thank you. Sorrel, you have something else to say?
Yeah, and Tara just said it, so I lowered my hand.
Oh, well, I think this has been amazing. I do think that it feels like we're pointing more towards not are you introverted or are you extroverted, but more about the intimacy, more about the connection with people. And just what Shiva said about meeting people where they are, I imagine that's a lot of what you teach in your communications work. It's like, how do you connect with another person? It's why I love asking the questions and why I can do it for hours, because it's seeing where somebody is and really connecting. So yeah, before we close out, what's one last takeaway you have for us, or one thing that's become really aware to you today, Tara?
I think don't label yourself.
Yeah.
And don't put too much pressure on yourself to be somebody that you're not. Lean into your gifts.
That's right. And who is it that said this? I may get this wrong. I think it was Henry Ford, but whether you tell yourself you can or you can't, you're right.
Yes, I think that might be right, Henry Ford. I know the quote.
Right. So make it up and make it good. Great. So we're going to close out today with our 7 tenets, which is we always start with love. Love each other, love yourself, love where you are on whatever introverted, extroverted spectrum, and enjoy it. Give of your time, of your resources, of your gifts, and eat more plants. Get that sleep. Throw your head back and laugh. Get those endorphins going, and that'll cause you to stress less and relax more. And last but not least, move that body. Move that body on out to have a great day, and then right back here tomorrow for the next Daily Huddle. Thank you all. We will see
Thank
you
you all
next
so much. It was a great conversation.